Lesson 52, properties of rectangles, rhombuses, and squares. Yes, there's.
Shouldn't that be rhombi?
Yeah.
It's not though, but you'd think it would be.
Why
It's hard to
would it?
say rhombuses, rhombuses. Yeah. So these are properties, and you can use them like in proofs and stuff, just like you would theorems, only you just call them properties. So one of the properties is that the diagonals of rectangles are congruent. So how about the diagonals of a square? Yes, they would be congruent. Okay, so here's a rectangle, QRST. They meet at U. Wait a minute. My example is saying more than or just congruent. PR is congruent to QS. Oh, okay. We already know that diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other. So that's from previous lessons. So if QU equals 14 feet, then RT would equal 28 feet. So because these two diagonals are congruent and they bisect each other, that means right in half. So if half of this one's 14, then the whole thing is 28 on both of them. Okay, the diagonals of a rhombus are perpendicular. Oh, I forgot part of the notes. You want to write here that QS is congruent to TR. So if we have a rhombus, there we go. So V W X Y. W X Y V.
So we need to put those right angles under.
Yes. And then this is a Z. Okay, so if this angle measures 5n minus 10 degrees, and this angle measures 2n plus 2 degrees, we want to find n. So before we find n, let's write down that Vx is perpendicular to Wy. That way I won't forget. So since they're perpendicular, we have to, these two acute angles will be complementary. So we can add 5n minus 10 and 2n plus 2 to get 90 degrees. Then we simplify, we have 7n minus 8 equals 90. We add 8 to both sides. 7n equals 98, and n would be 14. So if I wanted to find the angle measure of ZWX, I would plug in 14 for n. So the measure of angle ZWX equals 5 times 14 minus 10. Harrison.
How did you get 90?
Oh, because in a triangle, all three angles add to 180.
Oh, okay.
If one of the angles is 90, the other two will be complementary. They'll add to 90.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Okay. So 5 times 14 is 70 minus 10 is 60 degrees, which means the other one will be 30. So, the other cool thing about rhombuses is that each diagonal of a rhombus bisects the opposite angles. So here's our rhombus. So if we have angles 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Because opposite angles are congruent in a parallelogram, when you bisect them, then those angles will be congruent. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, which will then be congruent to angle 5, which is congruent to angle 6. And then angle 3 is congruent to angle 4, will be congruent to angle 7, will be congruent to angle 8. So let's do some practice using that information. Video is over.